Welcome to Part 3 of Science versus Atheism. This part is entitled Philosophical Speculation. As noted, much that is called science is in reality not science, but only philosophical speculation. If any claim in any discipline cannot be subjected to any part of the scientific method, then that claim is not scientific or science, regardless of any claim to the contrary. Non-existent connections or philosophical impostors are occasionally constructed to falsely bolster unsupportable claims in the name of science. These are usually referred to as indirect evidence. As far as true science is concerned, there is no such thing as indirect evidence, indirect testing, indirect proof, or indirect anything else. In true science, all testing must be direct physical testing in the present. No theories or conjectures can test or justify any other theories or conjectures. Theories may give clues and hints as to other theories, but the consequence must then be tested separately. The testing of the theories of true science is confined to the physical world of the present and cannot take place in the philosophical world of the mind. True science does not accommodate that which is not in the present, and which cannot be measured or evaluated. For this reason, the conjectures of macroevolution are not, nor can be considered to be scientific, since there is no physical way to execute the required tests. They are thus nothing more nor less than philosophical speculations. The same applies to much that occurs in many academic contexts. Too often the word scientific is unjustifiable, in which case doing so is a fallacy of transfer. It matters not how sincere or self-assured the claimant. Misapplying the term science diminishes precision and may lack honesty. If part or all of one's discipline does not admit the scientific method, then in precise terms, that part or all of the discipline is not science, but at the most philosophical conjecture. There is a significant difference between the testable hypotheses concerning controllable, repeatable, measurable processes in the present physical world and speculations regarding non-controllable, non-repeatable, non-measurable, conjectured, inaccessible events in the past as interpreted by philosophical speculations. In academic circles, there are examples of both that are called science, but the availability to test in the present is very different from speculation and ad hoc, non-testable philosophical explanations concerning the past. Let me interject with an example of philosophical speculation being pushed as science. Many of you probably watched the Bill Nye-Ken Ham debate. There was a point at which Ken Ham was frustratingly clueless about the legitimacy and power of his own position. His mistake was using the word science when describing what my father calls philosophical conjecture. He kept using the term historical science, and he indicated that those pursuits are inferior because the events in question are inaccessible. He was absolutely correct. At the very, very least, you have to have direct first-hand observation in the present in order to call the subject scientific. But because Ham used the word science, the entire point he was trying to make was lost on Bill Nye, who, quite horrifyingly, proceeded to equate conjectured assumptions about unverifiable events in the ancient past with first-hand testimony in the present. He said, "Oh yeah, it's science. What are we debating?" He also said, "Well, we do know what happened because dating methods." No, Bill, not even close. You cannot equate unverifiable stories about the distant past with controlled, repeatable first-hand access in the present. And perhaps someday I'll address that debate and how stunningly off base both sides were. Anyway, let's continue. The true science has the effective power of prediction as to present and future applications. The philosophical speculation merely creates ad hoc, non-testable conjectures explaining the past, which may be aesthetically, mentally, and emotionally satisfying, but has no other present or future application, thus no true scientific value. To apply the term to both is an attempt to transfer the respect and authority of true science to philosophical conjecture. That is, it is a fallacy of transfer. Doing so is of questionable purpose, perpetuates misunderstanding, imprecision, and diminishes clarity of thought. A basic question at this point would be to ask why in the name of honesty and precision anyone would want to do such things. There also seems to be a prevalent misconception among such that since they are scientists, as they suppose, they erroneously seem to feel that any claim they make, almost invariably incompatible with the scientific method, is thereby a scientific truth. And they so proclaim with solemn voices from high places, with austere countenances, and looks of authority and assurity that such is so. But there is no substitute for the simple and plain requirements of the scientific method. Not all fairy tales are found in children's literature. To designate anyone within a philosophical discipline as a scientist is to depreciate and misconstrue the power of the actual precise term, i.e., science. Also, one speaks as a scientist only when their discourse and expertise allude to that which is within the scientific method. Outside that context, their pronouncements do not carry the authority of a scientist. Sincerity and good intent are irrelevant. Science is science, and conjecture is conjecture. Any given discipline involving true science is usually a mixture of genuine scientific theories and philosophical conjecture. Unless one is careful and sifts the one from the other, there will be a tendency to blur or even deny the distinction between the two disparate parts. The philosophical is unnecessary to the scientific. However, since the practitioner is human, they may feel the emotional need to construct the philosophical network so that science has meaning or makes sense to them. Nevertheless, having meaning and making sense are subjective, and in the final analysis, irrelevant to the effectiveness of the science of the discipline. The practitioner may make certain connections in their own mind, and doing so may provide a comfort blanket for their own emotional needs, or they have not perceived the distinction nor disconnected the two within their own mind. It is all right to have such a comfort blanket if one has a subjective emotional need, and it is a motivator to pursue further development of scientific models, but one should still be aware and distinguish between the two. A related problem: there are no cross-currencies between any scientific platforms of either the same or different disciplines. Whatever authority one obtains by acquisition of ability and understanding within a given subject in the application of the scientific method within that discipline is confined to that discipline, and cannot, without the associated scientific tests, be imposed outside the confines of those tests. A molecular biologist, as a molecular biologist, has no authority from the platform of biology to make pronouncements concerning particle physics. A particle physicist has no authority from the platform of the tested theories therein to discourse concerning any untested connections to astrophysics. Any authority or ability that exists within the confines of the tested theories pertaining to a specialty must be confined to that specialty, and even then to the tested portions thereof. If honesty and precision of thought and understanding are to be valued, all claimed connections must be justified by the tests and testimonies obtained through application of the scientific method. Otherwise, only philosophical conjectures are involved. The body and extent of theories, models, and results within each of the scientific disciplines is growing exponentially because of the limits of time, the difficulty of acquisition of comprehension, and the limited capacity of the mortal mind. It is requisite to very finely specialize to be able to access the cutting edge of current research and advancement. Specialization thus tends to isolate. In many specialties, there is but a small handful across the earth that are competent to communicate precisely among themselves as to the nature and content of the pertinent current developments and research. Because of this, there is a trust that develops by those not within this inner circle, that the claims and theories emanating from the inner circle are within acceptable parameters of accuracy. Too often, this trust is misplaced, rarely with deliberation, most often naively by those with emotional attachments, hopes, misplaced devotion, or false convictions or perceptions as to science and truth. To compound this problem, once one pursues such a false trail, there is a tendency to cross the bounding limits of specialty expertise and move vast distances to subjects and interpretations well outside and beyond the expertise itself. Philosophical conjecture may justify philosophical conjecture, but it cannot have any direct effect on true science, much less reality. Yet this is what the anti-theists who fain claim the robes of science are proclaiming. when they argue from the basis of their pseudoscience perspectives. That's going to conclude this session. In the next presentation, we're going to talk about education and the imagination. Thank you for listening.